Hi everybody, thanks for watching this video here. Thanks, I'm glad you tuned in. We are going to talk about this topic, a very common topic in high school math classes, factoring tricky quadratics. So let me first explain what I mean by a tricky quadratic. What makes a quadratic tricky? Well, we are talking first about quadratics in three terms: ax squared plus bx plus c. You've seen a lot of quadratics like that. What makes it especially tricky is when the a term does not equal a positive 1. If it equals a 2 or a 3 or a negative 1 or a positive 17, it doesn't matter. Anything other than positive 1 multiplying the x squared part of your quadratic makes it a tricky quadratic. The third thing that tricky quadratics have is that those terms, a, b, and c, those numbers, have no common factors between them. All right, so if it meets all of those criteria, it's definitely a tricky quadratic, and you'll want to see if you can get a grip on this method that I'm going to show you here in this video. A couple more examples of tricky quadratics. There's one, 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. You can see that it's got three terms, and those coefficients have no common factors. 2, 5, and 3 have no common factors, and most importantly, the leading coefficient, or the number multiplying x squared, is not a positive 1. All right, here's a few other ones. I think you get the idea there. These are tricky, and so we are going to use essentially a two-step process to factor them. All right, the first step is something that I'm calling the diamond plus. It's using a diamond like we've used to factor simpler quadratics, but we use it in a little bit different way. So it's like the diamond, but it's a little bit extra. All right, and the other part of this process is factoring by grouping. All right, so if you've got a grip on factoring by grouping, if you've never done that, then you need to kind of look at that and figure out how that works first. This method depends on you being able to do that little factor by grouping process. It's not too hard, but if you've never seen it before, you'll want to check that out before you finish the rest of this video. Or maybe you can see just by following along how it works, because it's not, like I said, it's not a complicated process, factor by grouping, but it is a little bit different. So let's first take a look at the diamond plus, what I mean by the diamond plus, okay? So you've used diamond problems to help you factor simpler quadratics like that one there, x squared minus 5x plus 6. And if you recall, what you do is you set up the diamond, you take the last number, the constant, put that on the top of the diamond, you take the middle number, that's b, right, along with the sign there. If it's a negative sign, bring that along too, and you put that at the bottom of the diamond. Now you find two numbers that multiply at the top and they add to the bottom. In this case, it would be negative 2 and negative 3, and you're practically done right there. Those two numbers directly go into your factors for that quadratic. So you'd have x minus 2 times x minus 3, and you're done. Now, if, on the other hand, you have a trickier one like this, we are going to use a diamond problem, but it's not set up the same way necessarily, and we don't use the results of it in the same way. Let me show you what I mean. I think it'd be easier to do this in an example. So we'll use that same quadratic there as our first example on how to do this. All right, so you set up your diamond, x's right there, but instead of taking the last number and put it on top, you take the first number times the last number and put that on the top of the diamond. Okay, so 3 times negative 14 is negative 42. That's what goes on the top. So it's not just the last number now, it's the first number times the last number goes on top. The rest of the diamond works in the same way, however. So you'll take that middle coefficient, the b part, and put that on the bottom. In this case, of course, that's a positive 1 multiplying x, so that goes on the bottom. Then we fill out the sides of the diamond in the same way. I want to find two numbers that multiply to negative 42, but add up to positive 1. That turns out to be 7 and negative 6. Now, you got 7 and negative 6 from this diamond here. What we're going to do is use those numbers to rewrite the quadratic. And you'll see how we do this. The first number is the same, and what we do is we take the 7x and negative 6x. We got that straight from the diamond. That's where we got the plus 7x and the minus 6x. And then the last number is the same. So we're rewriting the quadratic. Now look carefully what we just did. What we really did was we rewrote that middle term, plus 1x. We rewrote it as plus 7x minus 6x, which of course equals positive 1x. So we rewrote that, and now we are going to do the factor by grouping method. All right? So we'll set up our little groups there and factor it out. And you can see, I'm not going into too much detail in the process right here. Let me back that up just a second here. There's our expression now, 4 terms. You set up your groups, and that first common factor from the common factor of the first group is just x. You take that out, you're left with 3x plus 7. The common factor of the second group is 2, or minus 2 there. You take out minus 2, and you're left with 3x plus 7. Observe the plus right there in the second group. It is correct, it's not a mistake, and that is how you do factor by grouping. You can see that if you multiplied it through, you'd end up with what we started with, so that's kind of the check. But now we're almost done. You finish that up. There's our common factor, 3x plus 7 now. We take that out of each one of those terms, and you're left with x minus 2. So that's the factorization of that tricky quadratic, 3x squared plus x minus 14. Now let's do another one, okay, because that was kind of went through that pretty slowly. Let's try another one so you get another idea how this works. Let's try 8x squared minus 10x plus 3. Again, definitely a tricky quadratic. So we'll set up the diamond problem. We'll take the first number times the last number, which is positive 24. We'll take put that on top, and then we take negative 10 that goes on the bottom. 2 numbers that multiply to 24 but add up to negative 10. Yes, I believe that'll be a negative 6 and a negative 4. So now we rewrite the quadratic with using those numbers in place of our original middle term. So 8x squared minus 6x minus 4x plus 3. So you can see the minus 6x and the minus 4x replaces the negative 10x. All right? So now we can use the factor by grouping. We can group up our terms there. The first group has a common factor of 2x. So I take 2x out. And then what I'm left with is 4x minus 3. The second group, no common factors. 4x plus 3, there's no common factors between those two terms. So we're going to use a minus 1, and that's just multiplying then to 4x minus 3. So once again, there's that tricky negative sign reversal. So please observe that. That is a part of factor by grouping. It happens fairly often. So a couple of examples using that extra trick there. If everything was positive, then you don't have to worry about that. But with minus signs in there, just pay a little extra attention to what you're doing, and you'll be okay. So there's our common factor, 4x minus 3, and we're left with 2x minus 1. That's our complete factorization of that tricky quadratic. I hope that was helpful. Thanks once again for watching, and I hope you continue to be well. And now let's go do some math.